So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the Piers Morgan Uncensored clip.
Tens of millions of people saw the horrific video of Charlie Kirk's assassination, whether they wanted to or not. It's a symptom of a culture in which everything is live streamed and every moment is analysed, debated, and often manipulated by people who no longer trust anything. If you spent any time at all online in the past week, you'll have encountered many conspiracy theories about Kirk's death and so-called evidence that the official story is incomplete. Everyone from Joe Rogan to Candace Owens has speculated with varying degrees of intensity that there's more to this than meets the eye.
I don't necessarily think they know what's going on yet. There's a lot of weird shit going on with this.
I know.
First of all, there was that one guy who was the decoy.
The family says that the photo of the young man that is coming up the stairs, which was shared, that blurry image, is definitively not Tyler Robinson. And let me just say, I never thought it looked like him. Neither did you.
All of this is probably quite hard on Kirk's family and friends, but we've learned the hard way about dismissing all theories out of hand, or simply telling people they're not allowed to talk about things we don't like. So we're going to look at these so-called Kirkspiracies in a bit of detail and ask whether there is actually anything to them. Joining me now is the former US Navy SEAL, Rob O'Neill, Joseph Scott Morgan, the co-host of the Body Bags podcast and a scholar of applied forensics at Jacksonville State, and the former CIA agent Mike Baker, host of the President's Daily Brief. Welcome to all of you. Rob, welcome back to Uncensored. Always great to have you. Just from a purely technical point of view, there's been a lot of speculation that a young, non-military trained, it appears, 22-year-old man could be at two football fields, 175 yards away from Charlie Kirk, and yet kill him apparently so skillfully with one bullet through his neck.
There's more than 175 yards in two football fields, Pierce, but we'll let him slide.
Just from a technical point of view, how difficult is that shot to make?
Good to be with you, Piers. Thanks for having me. That's an easy shot. Yeah, even
Right.
for someone, I mean, they throw the word sniper around almost as much as they throw the word hero around way too often. Anyone with a hunting rifle, a 30-06 like that, that's an easy shot. 200 yards as a sniper, which I am, you pick which nostril you want and I'll put it in it. So that's easy. The issues just for me, I mean, it was off it right from the beginning for me. Do we not guard rooftops anymore? There's been assassination attempts all over the world.
Right.
Why aren't we looking at rooftops? And then
That's a good point.
When I was sent the video with this at the same message where they said Charlie Kirk was just shot. When I watched that horrific video, he was obviously dead before he hit the ground. But the questions immediately started to come to me. That was not an entry wound that we saw. We saw an exit wound. So where'd that bullet come from? You don't bleed like, and I've shot guys closer than the camera was. And an entry wound doesn't look like that. An exit wound does. Why did his shirt move the way it did? When I've shot people, their shirts didn't move like that. And then
The exit wound thing is something that I noticed too. Like that doesn't look like a bullet that enters that way. And if a bullet entry looks like that, that means it hit something first, so it was tumbling over itself like this. So it created a large entry. But again, like like I said before, I've gone game hunting and I've shot deer and boar. And you usually, when it's a through and through, there's a big old hole on the other side, 4 inches, 5 inches wide sometimes, depending on what you're using, that's left. So it was weird.
And then the initial reaction was, well, he was obviously wearing body armor and it was deflection. One, no, he wasn't wearing body armor. And two, it doesn't deflect like that off of body armor. Why was his shirt moving from right to left? Why were people being interviewed saying, yeah, they came from my left to right, from his right to left, immediately shut down? And then did they tear the crime scene down immediately? Just right off the bat, from seeing it, knowing he was dead, saying a lot of this is bad, not even getting into the soliloquy of text messages that 22-year-olds don't send their trans lover.
Right.
So immediately it's just the official story sounds like it needs to be investigated. But now, the whole crime scene's gone. They paved over it. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, the text messages are really weird. There are words they use in there that I wouldn't use on a regular basis, that I know people younger than me don't use, like vehicle, and just the overall confession of everything via text message after you supposedly just did this. It just doesn't make sense. And Candace Owens goes over it in depth. Maybe I'll cover it if you guys want to see that. I'll put together all her theories and then we'll watch it in a long, kind of like a long form sit down.
I mean, it's really interesting that you think that, given your extraordinary experience. Obviously, you're the man who shot and killed Osama bin Laden. You're a Navy SEAL for 15 years. You've served in some of the most high-profile missions. So you think that there may well be some substance to some of these conspiracy theories?
So he was a badass.
I'm just saying, with especially in my experience with the Bin Laden raid, if you don't see it happen, people are going to say it didn't happen. So unfortunately, we're in a state of affairs where if I'm not there, I'm not going to say it did or didn't happen. I'm just saying what jumps out at me with AI right now, with everything that can be made up. If you don't see it firsthand, you don't know what happened. Videos can be made. Immediately it seemed off to me that, and plus as a sniper or a hunter, you don't take a neck shot. You take a neck shot because you missed.
Let me bring in Joseph Scott Morgan. You're a forensics scholar. What do you think of what you just heard there from Rob O'Neill?
Yeah, I think it's a fine assessment. One of the problems is that at this point in time, from a medical legal perspective, we don't have any data to go on. All we have are the speculative things that are floating about the internet. There are, by the way, not doing anybody any good here. We have a surgeon who was hands-on there that treated Charlie, and he even made reference, I believe, he said that Charlie was a Superman man of steel. In other words, what he's saying is the round passed through and it didn't strike anybody else, that the round, he's implying at least, did in fact embed itself in his body. Now, what the status of that round is, I don't know. We don't have an autopsy report yet either, which is a huge problem.
Exactly.
If you want to speculate on wound tracks and these sorts of things, and there are people out there that are actually saying that there was not an autopsy performed, even though it is required by Utah state law. The state medical examiner is put into that position where they have to do the autopsy. So if this is some kind of grand conspiracy, you would have to get a surgeon on board that had no idea this was coming, and you would have to get the chief medical examiner for the state of Utah to agree to this, which seems very fanciful at the very least.
The autopsy thing is totally baffling. Why would there not have been one?
Yeah, it's first off, let's stop using the word assassination. That's one of the problems we ran into with Kennedy. From a death investigator's perspective, a forensics guy's perspective, this is a murder investigation. This is a homicide. All right. You politicize it when you say assassination. Let the Utah State Police and let the medical examiner do their job in this particular case. Let them work this case as it is, as a homicide, and draw upon the physical evidence. And the reason we don't have these documents right now is this kid's going to be prosecuted. They're going to take him into court and they're going to prosecute him and they're going to seek the death penalty. So don't be shocked if we don't see an autopsy report for some time. And don't be shocked if the Utah State Medical Examiner keeps their mouth shut in here, because there have been other cases where people have run their mouths in advance and it winds up getting you in far more trouble.
I can understand that. We'll figure out a lot more things in the discovery phase of the trial, and I'm pretty sure the trial will probably be televised, and I'd be surprised if it takes, like usual murder trials, it shouldn't take 2-3 years. I think this one will be pretty quick. But he does make a point. The only pushback I have is, why is there not more information about the bullet and entry and exit wound, specifically because the ability for people to be able to create their own narratives is not helping anybody, and that's actually leading to a lot of disinformation, as well as just a lot of people speculating things that are incorrect. And I myself am guilty of that. I've speculated things. I thought, hey, maybe he was wearing body armor, because that entry wound, or at least what they thought was the entry wound in the neck, didn't make sense. Then I saw a video where it looked like he was shot from behind, and so that means, okay, that makes more sense, and that's why you didn't see an entry wound, because he was hit in the head and then it comes out of the neck. And so, or even the speculation of, oh well, he had Superman bones, and that doesn't make any sense, because if you get shot with that caliber bullet, that kind of bullet can go through 2-3 people and still hit you. So there are a lot of things here that are allowing for speculation, and I really think that FBI dropped the ball.
But does your gut tell you, Joseph, that this is most likely to have been the shooter we saw on the roof, who is this 22-year-old who's obviously facing the charges on the death penalty?
Yeah. At this point, I have no other reason to believe that it was someone else. some phantom that may have snuck up behind them that had popped off some kind of round from some other type of weapon platform that would have been in his rear. It seems to me, and look, I agree with Rob relative to the round. This is a very easy shot. I'm older than most of you guys. I had to qualify with iron sights at 300 yards in the Army. I'm not a very good shot, but way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, that's even an easy shot with a steel sight. So yeah, I'm not, with a telescopic sight from that range, yeah, I think it'd be a walk in the park.
Let me bring in Mike Baker. I mean, Mike, whenever there's a high-profile shooting like this, there's always raging conspiracy theories, and that's been massively exacerbated by social media and by a lot of, people probably in the world of debating these things, sometimes acting in deliberate bad faith, where they're just running with the conspiracy theories because it's getting loads of views and making money and so on. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite. We're running a debate here about the conspiracy theories to try and get to some reality. But I certainly don't want to promote stuff if it's outlandish. With all your experience as a former CIA agent, what is your overview of the Charlie Kirk killing?
Yeah, look, things, most of the time, things are pretty much as simple as they seem. Right. And then, and the other truism here is social media and the internet. I don't want to sound like a Luddite, but pretty much destroys everything it touches. Right. So the social media conspiracy theories started literally within a couple of minutes of people becoming aware that Charlie had been shot. Everything from this is a professional hit, and the unwarranted confidence of people on the internet and in social media to push forward their ideas is astounding. One minute they're a Russian criminologist, one minute they're a pandemic expert, the next minute they're an expert on assassinations. And if you combine that nature of human, tendency along with AI and deep fakes, it's
you have a shit show
that you disappear into social media and it's a cesspool. It is a sewer system, and that's where this young individual disappeared into. Right. So the idea, I'm not, again, you always have to be careful. Every investigation has to be built on facts, right? On evidence, on information. And our tendency, because we want an immediate answer, because we've all been trained for that and everybody's got ADHD, is they don't have the patience. And this was just pointed out. I agree with everything that was just said. You got to give these investigations time to sort themselves out. But that's not what people want. They want an immediate answer. And if you don't fill that void, they're just going to make crap up.
Everything that you've read, though, from more authoritative sources, is there anything ringing alarm bells? I mean, people have been talking about, why did he leave the weapon wrapped in a towel? A lot of coverage about him running across the rooftop. Would he be able to disassemble the rifle as fast as he apparently did, throwing it down his pants and jumping off the roof and so on? Is there anything about any of this which to you rings alarm bells or not?
All of that rings alarm bells.
No, honestly. No. I mean, I again, that's it's a simplistic answer. And yes, the investigation's still ongoing.
We had a couple people in the chat say a few things. One of them was some of the things I've read about the Charlie Kirk murder don't make sense. We need better answers. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't believe anything the FBI says. Patel can kick rocks. Hey man, I hear you, bro. I hear you with the bullshit, and call it what it is. Both of you guys make a good point, and it's sad that that's where we're at now. I wish, we'd have more information, at least more straightforward information. It'd make things a lot better, and I think it would calm down a lot of things.
Never say never, right? You never, there's always going to be something that could surprise you. But look, this guy obviously looked at Butler as an example. Rob said it himself. At what point do we look around? You could have scouted that perimeter and without really any formal training and said, I think I see a few problems here. And that's, I would look at this from more of an operational perspective, is how do you prevent the next one? How could you have prevented this? Well, look, it's hindsight, and that's a terrible thing to go on. But at the same time, they should have locked this down a long time ago. Charlie was getting death threats. He talked about them. He shouldn't have been doing events out in the open. You'd put them inside where you could, lock down the perimeter. You could screen people. You put up metal detectors. You just provide a more secure environment. But again, I don't want to armchair quarterback this thing, but that's where I typically go. I don't disappear down.
Well,
and start looking
I
for
think
alternatives.
right. I mean, let me bring Rob back in because you raised a really interesting question, Rob, which is, Donald Trump was nearly assassinated by a young guy around
Twice.
the same age as this shooter on a roof, about the same distance from somebody speaking in public. Charlie Kirk was an extremely high-profile conservative, representative of the conservative movement. Going into big open-air areas with roofs everywhere, it does seem quite staggering to me. And it was staggering to me when the Trump one happened, that someone like that could get that close on a flat roof with a clean shot at the President of the United States. And then even more extraordinary, 8 weeks later, somebody hid in a bush at a golf course and nearly killed him there. Again, I'm not a big conspiracy theory person as a rule of thumb because most of them turn out to be nonsense. But you haven't got to be a conspiracy theorist to think what is going on here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wasn't with the security team, and I don't want to pass judgment on their decisions that were made, but it's like it almost seemed like in the aftermath too, everyone shifting the blame where we had personal security, where there should have been local cops. Well, the campus security had this. It's like, look, man, give me 5 dudes, tier 1 guys, we'll lock it down. And the first place we're checking is the rooftops. Then we're checking the bushes. You're looking for little stuff like perfect circles, perfect squares, perfect lines don't exist in nature. So you're looking for scopes, you're looking for lines of a barrel, stuff like that. It should be locked down. And then, I mean, just even going back, speaking of conspiracies, going back to 9/11 with the plane hitting the Pentagon, we have one camera on the most secure area in the world. Why is it now in 2025 we got grainy footages of a dude who might not be the dude? You got people with this technology all over the place. Everyone's got a camera in their hand. Why is it we get one grainy footage of a dude that looks like someone's son?
Right. You got a grainy footage of a dude who might be a dude who looks like a dude that might be another dude. It doesn't make sense. And he's making a lot of good points. We should be able to first get good footage, 1, and 2, have stories that make sense. Also, security team needs to do a better job. And the other thing too that I want to mention before I resume the video is if the shooter has a line of sight to his target, then the target has a line of sight to the shooter.
It just doesn't make sense to me. You go back to was Jack Ruby just a great American because he killed Lee Harvey Oswald while he was saying he's a patsy, or was he a patsy? Who's involved in why? And it's again and just because I'm talking here next to my phone, the algorithm's listening to me. It's going to start shifting all this conspiracy stuff so I can look at it when I'm scrolling through my phone. So it's very important to realize what's real and isn't real. But it seems to me like nobody's.
It's very important to realize that. You see how I made that distinction? Oh, now I'm talking near my phone and it's going to start shoving things in my face about conspiracy theories, which is a big point. We're all fed things that we want to be fed. It's up to you to use discernment to make sure that you look at the facts, study the facts before you make your mind up on what you think happened, regardless of what situation it is, whether it's Charlie Kirk, whether it's political matters, whether it's football, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Any life decision with a fine-tooth comb. Also, the other thing I wanted to mention was, I forget the exact name. I think it's Occam's razor or something like that, where you don't prescribe malice to where you could prescribe stupidity.
Nobody's really been fired or gotten a lot of trouble for stuff that's happening. Look at the Secret Service detail. Look at the cops that were in that town. What have the counter snipers done? Is there any accountability other than the people who get shot? I mean, at some point there's got to be truth telling and accountability. I'm seeing none of that except conspiracy theories, and then everyone, myself included, is an online lawyer that has all the answers.
When we look at stories like this, I mean, one of the other aspects is that a lot of people come out, particularly on the left, and my views about this issue are well known. I'm not going to legislate those again, mainly because I'm not American. But I think on this one, many people say, well, obviously, if there was more gun restrictions, gun control, these young, unhinged people wouldn't get their hands on weaponry. But it seemed here, he just took his grandfather's old rifle. I'm not sure there's any new gun control law you could bring in that could stop that happening. I mean, what do you think of that part of this debate?
No, there's not. What are you going to do? Go to every house and get Papa's old hunting gun?
Exactly.
Because that's what this comes down to. We're talking about a Mauser 98 bolt action 30-06 rifle. Look, I live in the South. I can tell you the lion's share of people have at least a bolt action in their house, all right, and a shotgun. And you know, what are you going to do? Go door to door and seize all of the weapons? That ain't happening. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So the idea that this can be some way interdicted, I think is quite, it's an interesting consideration. But on the other hand, we've got an entire generation that's out there that has little or no help for mental health issues. And I think a lot of this goes back to that. You know, you begin to think about the road this guy was on, and I don't personally know him, but I do know that he's disturbed enough, at least at this point, it appears, that he's willing to take out Charlie Kirk in front of hundreds of other people. And by the way, if you just track that round from where he fired from, if he was off just a couple of inches, that round would have been powerful enough to have passed through maybe a couple of people.
That's exactly what I
route.
said.
He had a very small window that he was aiming through. If you look at the top of that tarp and then the top of the heads below, that guy had to get that shot off through there. If he had miscalculated in any way, it could have killed other people.
Yeah.
So you've got somebody that certainly is not risk averse here. And the big question is, why would that be? Why would this be normalized behavior? Because I got to tell you, it kind of seems like it is sometimes.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Mike, one of the big sort of conspiracy theories raging, Joe Rogan was particularly skeptical about this one, was the role of a guy called George Zinn, somebody who acted irrationally.
Yeah, that guy was weird,
scene,
for sure.
Was initially arrested. Let's listen to what Joe said.
This guy was at 9/11. He was at the Boston bombings.
All the hits.
He called in a fake bomb at another place.
Yeah.
And then he did this at this thing. Right after, so somehow or another, this guy has the state of mind that the moment someone gets shot, he yells out and says, I did it, and takes his pants down or something like that. I don't know exactly what he did. Then, ready for this? He gets arrested for child porn right away.
Right
away.
Oh, right away. He's in jail for child porn. Why is that? Well, now you can't interview him.
Yep.
So we looked into this.
That's insane. That's insane. You don't want to feed the conspiracy theories, but then all these things happen. What do you think is going to happen? And we don't have a lot of information about the details that we would need to be able to dispel some of these conspiracies. Yeah, the internet is going to go crazy.
On the bomb threat history, the Associated Press did report on April the 23rd, 2013, that this guy, George Zinn, made a bomb threat at the Utah Marathon shortly after the Boston Marathon. But there's no actual evidence he was also at the Boston Marathon. On the 9/11 suggestion, there's no credible evidence supporting claims that Zinn was present at that either. A lot of these associations seem to have been promoted from pretty crazy accounts on X, not verified reporting. The child pornography arrest did happen. So again, Mike, there's a lot of stuff flying around here, and no one's really sure what to believe. It was a weird moment because I was watching it all at the time, and this guy, George Zinn, is quite well known to people. He's quite notorious. The fact he was there at all just looked very odd, but he seems to have been just a complete red herring. He's nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Look, there's and that goes back to what we talked about before, right? You've got to build, whether you're an individual who's trying to assess the credibility of something you're reading online, whether you're involved in an investigation, you got to build these things on firm ground, right? And again, if you hear something, it gets repeated, someone clicks on it, they send it to their friends. Next thing you know, you got people saying, yeah, this guy's the Zelig of disasters. He's been showing up at every crisis and disaster, for 20 years. And none of it's built on actual information,
or facts.
Credible, proven information. The only way, look, I go on about this all the time, but the only line of defense to stop some of the nonsense that's out there is the individual. The individual person has to learn how to be somewhat cynical and curious, and to take the time, which is difficult because everybody's busy, take the time to look into the credibility of the crap they're reading before they just send it along or repeat it to somebody else. You've got to do this. I will go back to a couple things that were just said, if I may. This is a mental health crisis. It's not a gun control crisis. So I agree 100%.
That's a good point too.
Our failure in this country is dealing with mental health issues. right? And that's basically at the bottom of all of these recent incidents that we've been seeing. The other thing is, this kid wasn't taking a neck shot. You read these things and go, oh my God, that's a professional shot. This kid got lucky, and nobody wants to think that something this terrible or tragic can happen because his shot, he was probably going center mass, or he was going somewhere. He was not saying to himself, I'm going to shoot Charlie Kirk in the neck. And so if you think about the terrible fortune of that happening, nobody wants to think that it's bad luck to create something that causes this much sadness or emotion.
Yeah.
It's similar to Kennedy or some of these others where, it lives on because people don't want to think that a world-shattering event could happen because some psycho picks up a gun and gets off a shot.
Two very extremely good points. I agree with both of them.
Rob, you touched on this earlier, but I think one of the more curious aspects of this, which I think needs a lot more answers, are the text messages between the shooter and
those texts
his
are crazy.
trans boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever you want to call his trans partner.
Right.
Because they just read like almost if you were putting stuff into AI of, know, how to do text message exchange, it would come out like this, right? It didn't read to me very natural. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 adult kids that text me, not every time I'd like them to, but they do, and it never sounds like that. I can't remember the last time my 22-year-old used a comma. My 18-year-old certainly never has.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. And it's either AI or when I started reading it, other than, no one saying rifle, no one saying my love over and over.
Or vehicle.
My first thought was, this is someone who doesn't speak English as their first language. They're translating it, but it's almost like when it's like sending a dude from South Boston to Georgia and having them fit in. You just sound a little bit different. I can tell you from somewhere else. The texts don't make any sense whatsoever, and the way that they're just put out there, this long dramatic script. Again, that's in a handful of stuff that just doesn't make sense to me anyway. I wasn't there. I need to keep reiterating that. I didn't like that. I don't like the number of tools that you need to take apart 30-06, or how much time you need, how many different tools, and then
that's really interesting. So let me stop you there. So if you were doing that with all your training, you were one of the most elite guys in special forces in American history. If you were dismantling this precise rifle, how long would it take you to do it?
A 30-06, well, it's going to take several minutes. I can't even remember I grew up, my first rifle was a 30-06 in Montana, and I can't remember the last time I took it apart. I could take the bolt out, clean that off, but in order to break it down to the point where you can even walk with a limp, it's going to take a solid 5 minutes, I would guess, with different. I don't even think you use that type of a screwdriver that he had with his DNA conveniently all over it, because everything you touch has your DNA on it. It's just taking it apart, putting it together, taking a shot, cold bore, by the way, where your scope wasn't on there, taking it back apart, putting it in your pants, climbing down a fence, getting back into the woods, putting it together as you're on the run, wrapping it in a towel, then driving 200 miles away to type to my love the 300 lines of text. It's just, none of it makes sense to me. Again, I'm not conspiring with anybody, and I'm not saying it was something that it's not. And like Mike was saying, it's usually the most obvious thing that happened is what happened. I wish it never happened, but so many things just don't add up to me.
Yeah, they just don't. And I'll stop the video there. I don't want to be that guy on the internet who thinks, oh, this is done by some other country or blah, blah, blah. None of that stuff. I just want to get all the info, because right now the info we have isn't making sense.